Science is now subjective. Now, not completely. If you're building a rocket ship, if you're Elon Musk, science is very objective. You got to get it right or you're not going to end up on Mars. But for most of this social stuff, and even climate change and energy and forest fires and all of this stuff, none of this is science. None of this is science. Because the scientific loop has been corrupted. Because there's this feedback loop between science and the fake news is destroying science. Science doesn't have a frickin' chance. Science is a victim to the fake news. Because once the fake news has primed them with enough bullshit, they don't have an option of doing real science. Because if they did, they'd get fired. Scientific American, the magazine, has decided for the first time in 175 years to endorse a presidential candidate, and they're going to endorse, or they have endorsed Biden, because they think that Trump is anti-science. Now, here's what's funny about this. Scientific American apparently doesn't know science. Because you know what else is science? Confirmation bias, psychology, cognitive dissonance. That's science too. So how do the scientists know they're doing science and they're not doing confirmation bias? Did they do science to find out that their opinion is objective? Or did they? Do you think the Scientific American said, hey, we all agree, and apparently it was unanimous, they said, we all agree that Trump would be the unscientific president, so we're gonna do that. Do you think when they agreed that, they said, but wait, we're scientists, and since we're scientists, we also know that we could be susceptible to confirmation bias without knowing it, and cognitive dissonance without knowing it, because that's what it is. It's the very fact that you don't know it is what gives it its name. So did they then say, we better do a scientific test to find out if we're biased, if we can, or to find out if we're actually just scientifically smart? I don't think they did that. Do you? No. So they used a completely non-scientific method, I mean deeply non-scientific, because if you and I looked at them, you would say to yourself, it just looks like Democrats to me. It just looks like Democrats. That's it. Do you think there were many Republicans in the group? Did anybody ask? Did anybody ask if the board of the Scientific American magazine had any Republicans on the board? No, nobody asked that. Nobody asked that question. And do you think that that would have mattered? Yes. Yes, that would have mattered. Do you know why? Because science is now subjective. Now, not completely. If you're building a rocket ship, if you're Elon Musk, science is very objective. You got to get it right or you're not going to end up on Mars. But for most of this social stuff, and even climate change and energy and forest fires and all of this stuff, none of this is science. None of this is science. Because the scientific loop has been corrupted. Here's the loop. Science makes a study. They put it on CNN. CNN interprets it a certain way. And they say, that's a good study, that's good, and anybody who disagrees with this is a bad person. Okay, so now CNN has told the public what to think. They've programmed their minds. Some of the public are scientists. So the scientists are watching the news too. They watch the news and the news says, okay, CNN says that all the good people, the people who are worthwhile, they all agree with the same scientific view. So now I'm going to go get a grant and go work on something. Am I going to work on something that CNN says is only bad people work on? Or am I going to work on something that only good people work on? So you see where I'm going here. As long as the fake news is in the middle of the loop, well, you can't be in the middle of a loop. Yeah, you can be in the middle of a loop. Shut up, Scott. Stop talking. I might have had some brain damage after all. But because there's this feedback loop between science and the fake news is destroying science. Science doesn't have a frickin' chance. Science is a victim to the fake news. Because once the fake news has primed them with enough bullshit, they don't have an option of doing real science. Because if they did, they'd get fired. So does Scientific American know that real science doesn't exist if it's also something in the public? If it's just sciencey and nobody's looking at it but scientists, that probably works out pretty well. But as soon as the public gets in there, hey, what about our forest fires in California? Sorry, goodbye science. Now we're going to say it's climate change. That's not science. I mean, there might be some climate change that has an impact, but by far the forest management is the bigger issue, etc. And obviously, nuclear energy would be the only thing you would do if you were trying to fix climate change and you were serious about it, you really meant it. There's only one solution that we know of, it's nuclear energy. So the people who purport to be the keepers of science, Scientific American, they could not have been less scientific about this until to the point where parody and reality have merged.